costing techniques. We shall use or we shall be looking at the various methods that the business uses in order to find the total cost of producing a product. So we will be looking at various costing methods or various costing techniques. Some of them comprise of job costing. So we shall look at job costing, batch costing, contract costing, and then we shall also look at unit costing and service costing in this unit. So what is costing techniques and what do they entail? So when you're talking about costing techniques, these are the methods that businesses use in order to accumulate the total costs that have been incurred in producing certain products or in providing certain services to their clients. So it is the process by which the business uses to accumulate the total costs that they have incurred in order to produce a certain product or to produce a certain service or to provide a certain service. So depending on the nature of the organization, depending on the kind of products that you're offering and the industry in which you're operating in, you can adopt either of the methods that we are going to look at. So if, for example, you are a service company, then you will be utilizing what we call service costing techniques. If you are a company that is providing a unique product for every customer that comes in to your business and they are asking for a product, and you're now custom making this product specifically to meet the requirements of a client, then in such a case, you will be using job costing techniques. If you're a company that is producing a similar product, an identical product, and you are producing it in masses, and this product you are producing it in masses and they are identical, then in such a case, we will be looking at the use of batch costing. If you are a company that deals with projects, let's say, for example, you're a construction company, then in such a case, you're going to be given contracts. So in such a case, you will be using what we call the contract costing method. So costing techniques generally, they refer to those methods, those approaches that businesses use in order to compute how much in total they have spent in order to produce a product or to offer a service to their customers. And we shall be looking at each and every of the techniques to see how they are used by the business and also to compute the cost of producing units or products in the company. So we shall start off with the first method. The first method is the job costing method. And the job costing method, this is a method that we use or that organizations use to cost a job. So the first thing that we need to define is what a job is. So a job is essentially a cost unit which consists of a single order or a single contract. So let's say, for example, you are a carpenter. Let's just use an example of a carpenter. You see, for a carpenter, whose work is to produce furniture or whose work is to custom make furniture for customers as they come in, then each customer is going to come in with their specifications. In this case, a customer is going to come in and they're going to come in with an order. And this order is going to be different from the next customer's order, is going to be different from the previous customer's order. So let's say someone comes in and tells you, I want you to custom make a table for me. And this table, I want it to have, for example, I want it to be a 6-seater. I want it to be an 8-seater. I want it to be a 10-seater. And I want the chairs to also be unique. And then they give you the design for it. Another customer comes in and they tell the carpenter, I want you to make, let's say, for example, I want you to make a couch for me. So in this case, you tell them that in this case, This is the number of seats I want it to have. I want it to maybe be a 3-seater and also a 2-seater. Another customer is going to come in and they tell the carpenter, I want you to make cupboards for me, or I want you to make cabinets for me. So in this case, a job is that single order that this individual, that this organization is going to get, that is unique from the other previous customers' orders that the company had received and had worked on in the past. So job costing itself is the costing technique that is used where each job is separately identifiable as a cost unit. That as an organization, in this case, we have, yes, we are providing a service, we are providing a product, but each customer is coming in with their own specifications, and therefore they are unique. So when we are now computing the total cost that we've incurred in this period, we are going to consider each and every order that we had. How many materials, how much did we spend in terms of raw materials? How much did we spend in terms of labor? How much did we spend in terms of the other expenses? So that process of accumulating the total cost that the company has incurred in order to produce a certain product or a certain service, a certain product which is unique, that is what we call the job costing technique. And the aim of job costing technique is to be able to now add what is to be able to account for each and every cost that the company has incurred. That in this case, we have incurred this amount in terms of raw materials, labor, and other overheads or expenses. And this is now the total that the company has spent on this product. So job costing is only used in those organizations that produce a unique item, and costs can be specifically traced to each item that is produced. So in that case, we are also going to be numbering, because again, the carpenter, the company is going to be incurring different, or is going to be producing different items. So it means that they need to be able to identify each job. So we find that in most cases, they often give these jobs identifying numbers, which now they can be able to identify that job number 55. This is what we did. This is the product to produce, this or the specifications, and these are the total costs that the business incurred in order to produce those units for that, or to produce that unit or that product for that particular client. So you're going to find that these jobs are always given identifying numbers, or what sometimes we call job numbers or contract numbers. So what do we look for when we are now undertaking job costing? So it's saying that costing, the costing technique itself is how the organization is able to identify how much the company, that is the company is going to identify how much it has incurred in order to produce a certain product. So it is all about accumulating the total cost that the company has incurred for that specific item. So we start off with the material costs. How much have you spent in terms of direct and indirect materials to produce this item and make it ready for sale to the client? If you have incurred any form of materials, then you are going to, if you're incurring any amount in terms of material, you have to include each and every material that has been specifically bought in order to fulfill that job that you have been given by the client. So in this case, you're going to include all the direct materials, all the indirect materials. And we talked about what direct materials are and what indirect materials are. We say that direct materials are those materials that can be specifically traced to a specific product or a unit of a product. So if, for example, now we're working with a carpenter, all the materials that the carpenter uses, for example, the pieces of wood, those ones are going to be classified under the direct materials. And then things such as glue, things such as lubricating oils, that might be used, especially if now they were they had any joint or moving parts, that had, let's say, that had metal in it, and in such a case, those ones will be classified as the indirect materials. Then we have labor cost. You'll find that in most cases, these jobs are labor intensive, but you have individuals have to work in order to now manufacture the item or to make it ready for the clients. In that case, now you have to factor in what is the total amount that the company has incurred in terms of the payments to the employees of the company as compensation for the work that they have done. So in this case, you might have timesheets so that the employees can be able to fill their timesheets on each and every job that they undertake, so that if you're paying them in terms of the number of hours, you can be able to see how many hours do these employees take in order to produce this product, so that you know how much of the total labor cost can you be able to charge to that specific job, because in this case, it is going to be dependent on how many hours exactly were spent in that particular job, and then any other expenses that the business has incurred in order to make that item ready for sale. So if there are any direct expenses, then you are going to include them there. And we say that a direct expense is an expense that can be specifically attributed to that particular product or to that particular job. So if there are any costs that you have incurred, and you can be able to say that the company incurred this cost so as to be able to produce this item, then in such a case, we call that one a direct cost or a direct expense. So in this case, all direct expenses have to be included in the job number. And then if there are also some indirect expenses, and you can be able to say that these expenses, the company incurred them, and the only reason as to why we incur them is because we had to finish this job. So maybe we had to hire this machine, and because we had this machine, we had to pay an amount. So we can't see this cost in the final unit of a product, so that we classify it as a direct cost or a direct expense, but we have incurred it simply because the company needed to hire someone or needed to hire this machine for us to have this product ready for sale or ready for the customer. So all expenses that you can be able to attribute to that particular unit, they have to be recorded under the job cost. So let's look at the aim of job costing. Why do we do job costing? So the aim of job costing is to collect the cost information about the product. And what is this cost information? It will be the details about the direct materials, the direct labor, and the direct expenses. That should give us the total direct cost, or what we were calling the prime cost. So once you have obtained the total direct cost, then you're going to add the indirect cost. The indirect costs, these are the ones which we call them, sometimes we call them the production overheads, or other costs that the business has incurred, but they are not directly traceable to that particular unit. Those ones we call them the production overheads. So in this case now, the direct cost plus the production overheads should give you your total production cost. And then now you add for this particular unit, how much did the company pay in terms of administrative overheads, selling overheads, and any other amount, maybe the selling and distribution overheads. That should give you the total cost of that particular job. So it is almost similar to what we were looking at when we started the unit, and we were looking at the various ways to compute the cost of a product. So in this case, instead of saying this specific product, we are working with a job because the company has received a special order or a unique order from the customers, and therefore those unique orders that a company has received, then because they are not similar to any other, you have to accumulate for each and every one of them. How much have we incurred in terms of materials, in terms of labor, and any other expenses? So now that is why a company usually utilizes a costing technique. And you say that costing techniques are going to be dependent on what kind of organization you have. So if you have an organization that deals with unique products for each client, such that it is not a repetitive kind of product or an identical product for every customer, then in such a case, that unique product is, or that unique product or that unique job you're providing is now going to be costed using the job costing technique. So only when a company has a unique product is when we utilize the job costing technique. So I want us to look at an example whereby we have been given a question and regarding a specific job, and then we're required to show how much is the total cost associated with that job. So we're told here that job 676 required 20 kgs of a material in stores, which cost a total of $15 per kg. And also a special component had to be bought at a cost of 150. 30 hours of labor was spent on the job, where the employees were paid at the rate of $9 per hour. In addition, 3 hours was spent by a supervisor who is paid at the rate of $15 per hour. Overheads are absorbed at the rate of $4 per labor hour. So I want us to look at this question together so that we can see how much in total has the company incurred for this particular job. So just want you to take a minute to go through the question, read the question, and then once you've understood the question, then we can work together at it. So take a few minutes, just a minute should be enough to read through the question, and then we discuss it and see how now to compute the job. And you're saying that computing the job cost is essentially adding up those costs. How much is the total materials? How much is the total labor cost? How much is the total expenses that the business is going to incur for that particular job? The number of hours that was spent. So we have here 33, and each hour is absorbing a cost of $4. So therefore we have 33 multiplied by 4. That should give us a total of 132. So once you have factored in all the costs that the business is incurring, then now we can go ahead and do what? We can go ahead and add them up. We get the total job cost. So how much is the total job cost? So we come and add 300 plus 150 plus 270 plus 45 and then plus 132. That should give us that the total job cost for this particular unit will be equal to $897. That is 300 for the direct materials, which you say that it will be equal to the 20 kgs of material in stores multiplied by the $15 per kg. And then the special component, you're told that this one was equal to 150. Then we had now the direct labor cost. In this case, the 30 hours each being paid at the rate of $9 per hour. That one we got 270. Then now we have the 3 hours by a supervisor who is paid at the rate of $15 per hour. That one should give us 45. And then we'll add the last one, which are the overheads. And the overheads are saying that they are being absorbed at the rate of $4 per labor hour. And we have 33 labor hours. So when we add them up, we get the total job cost. So that is how we do job costing, that you want to accumulate and know for this particular unit that we are producing, how much in total is the company incurring? Are we incurring materials. If you're incurring materials, you add up the material cost. If you are incurring any labor costs, you add up the labor cost. If you are incurring any other expense, which we call the overheads, again, you add them up. So job costing is the simplest technique for allocating costs and also for accounting for the total cost of a product. That you have one unique product and you can be able to trace some cost to that unique product, which means that now you can be able to know that for this particular item, these are the total costs incurred in terms of material, labor, and overheads. And then you add them up and you're able to get the total job cost. So we have here another example that we can look at just to see again, if now the question is twisted a little bit, how can we be able again to compute the total job cost? So at the end of the day, we're saying that job costing is about accumulating the cost. So you want to know how much in total has the company incurred in order to produce this particular product. So we are told that a company has 2 jobs in the current month. And these 2 jobs are job X and job Y, which were carried out in 3 production departments. These departments comprise of the cutting department, assembly, and finishing department. Production overhead rates based on labor hours for these departments are as follows. So we're given that the total production overhead rates based on the labor hours are that given 200, Kenya shillings, 1,286. Then we have 1,240. The other one we have is 1,403. 1,403. So this one is for the 3 departments, that is the cutting department, the assembly, and the finishing department. Then you're told that product X and Y have the following estimated costs. So we have product X for the direct materials of product X. This one is going to cost them 154,000. And then for direct material for product Y, this one costs 108,000. Then we've been given the direct labor hours per each department. So you're told that the labor hours for department A is equal to 20 hours for product X. And then for product Y, it spends 16 direct labor hours in department A. Product B spends, not product B, but in department B, product X spends 12 hours and product Y spends 10 hours. For now, department C, which is the finishing department, the company spends a total of how much? The company spends a total of 10 hours in that department and 14 hours in department C. So you've also been given the labor rates per hour, that department A pays a labor rate of 3,800 per hour. And then we also have 3,500 for department B, and then per hour they spend 3,400 in department C. She told that assuming a profit markup of 20%, calculate the price quoted for job or for each job. So in this case, we need to know how much in total is the cost of the job. And then from there on, we add now the 20% markup. We should be able to get now the price that the company is going to quote for each job that they have. That is for job X and also for job Y. So I'm going to give you again just a minute to go through the question, internalize what the question is asking, and then from there on, we can work on it together. So take just a minute to go through the question, read pole pole, see the different parts of the question, and then now we can work on it together. Okay, so we can start looking at the what? We can start looking at the question. So we shall start off with the first job. The first job is job X. So for each and every one of the jobs, we have to factor in how much in total is the company incurring in terms of material costs, in terms of labor costs, and then also in terms of the overhead costs. Because for each and every of the items, the company has to incur what? The company has to compute the total material costs for each and every one of the departments that we have, and then also for each and every of the product that we have. So we'll start off with job X, and then we go on to compute the value for job number Y. So in this case, we've been told that we have the product, and we have two products, and each product is going to require materials. So those materials, how much in each case, how much is the material, how much is the direct labor, and then also how much is the total production overheads that the company is going to be incurring per product. So let's look at this together. We shall work it out step by step so that we can see how to do that. Just a second. Okay, so we can start with the first job. So that is job X. So in this case, you have the first job, job X. So we come here and say job X. So job X, we start with the direct materials. So how much is the direct materials that the company is paying? So in this case, you're told that the direct materials were equal to 154,000. So we come here and say 154,000 for the materials. Then we have now the second element, which is the direct labor. So in this case, you're given the direct labor per department. We're told that in each department, the company is spending 20 direct labor hours to produce product X. And for every hour that is spent in department A, the company is going to incur what? The company is going to incur a total of 3,800 per hour. Then we have now for job B, it is going to spend 12 hours there. And for each hour spent there, it is going to spend 3,500. Then we have job C. For each hour spent in job C, they're going to pay 3,400. And each job requires 10 hours to make, or that job requires 10 hours to make. So we come here and say the direct materials. So for the not materials but labor, sorry. So we have direct labor. So we have in department A. So department A, we're going to multiply the number of hours spent there, 20, multiplied by the 3,800. So we come here and say 20 multiplied by 3,800 should give us the total cost that the company spends there. So 20 times 3,800, that should give us how much? 76,000. For the direct labor in department A. Then we do the same in department B. So for department B, we have 12 hours, and each hour they're going to spend 3,500. So we come here and say 12 times 3,500. That should give us an amount of how much? So 12 times 3,500. That should give us a total of 42,000. Then now we have for department C. And for department C, we are going to have how many? So we have 10, and each hour to produce product X is going to require 3,400. So we have 3,400 multiplied by 10. So we come here and say 10 multiplied by 3,400. So again, that one we get the total. So we have 3,400 times 10, that should give us 34,000. So that is for the direct labor. Then we were given here some additional information. We are told that about the production overheads. You say that production overheads are those other costs that the business incurred. And you're told that the production overhead rates based on labor hours for these departments are 1,286, 1,240, and 1,403 respectively. So therefore, we are going to add those, what we're also going to add the production overheads. So we come here and say production overheads that the company incurs. So we're given the different departments. So it told that the production overheads for these departments, which was based on the labor hours. So the production rates based on labor hours for these departments are 1,286, 1,240, and 1,403 respectively. So in this case, now we're going to add those production overheads. So we add the 1,286 plus 1,240 plus 1,403 to give us the total production overheads that the company has incurred. So in this case, we come here and say, so we have the first one is 1,286. So we say production overheads. So we have for the three departments. So the first department we had was cutting department. So we come here and say for cutting department, that one was given as 1,286. Then we have the second department, which we've been given here, is the assembly department. So in this case, for the assembly department, we're going to have we're going to have a total of 1,240. So we come here and show an amount of 1,240. And then we have the last one. The last department that we have been provided with is the finishing department. So we come here and say also for the finishing department, and this one we're given an amount that is equal to 1,403. So we come here and say 1,403. Then now we come here and get the total job cost. So we come and say the total job cost. So how much will be the total job cost? So we'll have to add up these values. And I want us to note something about this question, and something that is slightly different from the other question. In this particular question, about the production overheads, we have not been told that they are going to be absorbed. So we're told that they have already been computed based on the labor hours. And for these departments, the total production overheads that have been incurred were equal to these amounts that we have been provided. In the previous question we had been given, we are told that the overheads will be absorbed at the rate of this per labor hour. So we were not told so we were expected now to compute the total amount of overheads depending on those labor hours that we were provided. But in this case, we have our costs and they have already computed for us based on the labor hours. That is why we are adding them directly. So we'll add the 1,286 plus the 1,240 and then plus the 1,403. We get now the total job cost. So we have here 154,000 plus 76,000, plus 42, and then plus 34,000 plus 1,286, 1,240, and then lastly plus 1,403. So let's compute that. So 154,000 plus 76,000 plus 42,000 plus 34,000 plus 1,286 plus 1,240 and then plus 1,403. That should give us a total cost of 309,929. So using this value here, the question doesn't end here. The question is telling us that assuming that the company wants to make a profit markup of 20%, calculate the price quoted for each job. So when you're given a question and you're given the markup, a markup, this is whereby the company adds an amount on top of the cost of the asset in order to come up with the price. So in this case, the markup, you're going to add the cost and then now 20% of the cost. So plus 20% of the cost, that should give us the total price of the item. So for our case here, we have computed that the total cost of this item is equals to 309,929. The company would want to add an extra 20% on top, so as now to be able to make a profit of an extra 20% of the total job cost. So therefore we multiply 20% of this amount to see how much markup the company is going to make. So in this case, 20% of 309,929, this should give us 61,985.8. So when we add up the total, we're going to get the price of the item that the company should charge. So in this case, we'll have 309,929 plus the amount of markup they have added. So in this case, we'll have 371,914.8 is the price that the company should quote for this particular item. So that is now how you are expected to show the values, or expected to show the total amount that the company is going to incur, and how much, again, if they were to add up a markup, how much will be the total price of the item. So I want you to now try out again the same question, but now work out for job number Y, that if now the company was to compute the total price of job number Y using now again the same approach and the same method, how much will be the total cost for this particular job? And then in addition to that, how much will be the total amount that the company is going to incur in terms of, how much will be the total cost, and then also how much will be the price that the company should quote if now they add that profit markup of 20%. So take a few minutes to work out on what? To work out on this item, or on this for job number Y. We are done with the question. Okay, so using the same procedure we had for project or for job X, then we do the same for job number Y. So we start off with the direct materials, then the direct labor, and then for each direct labor, you multiply by the total direct labor hours multiplied by the labor rates per hour. So in this case, you have 16 times 3,800, 10 times 3,500, 14 times 3,400. And then now we add the production overheads that were incurred as you have been provided there. Once you have obtained the total job cost, then you add the markup of 20%. So 20% multiplied by the total amount. In this case, 20% of the total cost you've incurred or the company has incurred, then you're able to get the price for that particular job. We move on to the second type of cost or the costing method. The second method, we call it the batch costing method. And under batch costing method, this comes from the term a batch, which is to imply a collection of items that have been bound together or that have been produced together. So you'll find that there are those organizations whereby they're producing the same unit, and this same unit is identical. So they're producing many identical units together. Let's take an example of pens. You find that a company such as Bic or whichever pen you fond of, they're not going to just produce that pen specifically for you. They will produce that same identical pen over and over again. So you find that they're going to produce them maybe in hundreds, in thousands, in millions, again, depending on the nature of the organization and the nature of the product. So in such a case, you'll find that in the event that the company is producing identical items, and these identical items are separately identifiable, then they can now use what we call batch costing, whereby they say that we will be producing these units in batches. We'll be producing these units in batches, and then we shall be computing the cost, the total cost in terms of the batch cost. So you're going to see how much is the total materials that we produced for this particular batch. Maybe the batch is made up of 100 items. So for the 100 items, how much did the company produce in terms of materials? How much did the company incur in terms of labor? How much did the company incur in terms of expenses? So you see, for an item such as a pen, for example, the company can't go and start saying, for each pen, they now start to measure the ink that is there. For each pen, they start to measure the amount of plastic that has been used to now make the nib and make the housing of the pen. So they decide that we're going to group these items and produce them as a batch. So we can produce maybe 1,000 pens together. And then in this 1,000 pens, we compute how much is the total material, how much is the total labor, how much is the other expenses that have been incurred. We add them up cumulatively for the 1,000 units. And then if we want to know now how much the company is going to be incurring per unit, we will average this batch cost over the number of units produced. So if now we are looking at a batch cost and you now want to get how much the cost will be per unit, then it will be equal to the total batch cost divided by the number of units in a batch. So let's say, for example, we have a batch, and for this batch, we've computed that the total material, total labor, and the total direct or the total expenses is something equal to 100,000. And then the company has produced 2,000 units in that batch. So to get how much the cost per unit will be, we are going to average the batch cost over the number of units to be produced in order to get the cost per unit. So in this case, the cost per unit will be the 100,000 divided by the 2,000. That will mean that the company on average is producing each unit at a cost of 50. So essentially, the way batch costing works is almost similar to the way the other job costing method works, only that instead now of the company producing each unit uniquely and separately, they are producing these units all together in one batch. We compute the total materials for the entire batch, and then afterwards now we do what? Afterwards, now we can get the cost per unit, because sometimes it can be a little bit cumbersome for the organization to go ahead and compute for each and every unit that exists. So instead they do what? So instead they're going to compute for the entire batch, and then they divide or average over the number of units produced to get the total unit cost or the total cost per unit for that batch. So saying that a batch is a group of identifiable but separately, a group of identical but separately identifiable products that are made together. In batch costing, several identical items are produced as a batch. Each batch is going to be given a number for identification purposes. And I'm sure if you look at some products, these products that are usually produced all together, you're going to find that they have a batch number so that they can be able to track it to know for this particular batch, this is how much you spend to produce them. And then also if there are any issues with those batches, then they can easily be recalled. So I'm sure you have seen cases whereby, for example, in terms of phones, they tell you that you check which batch number this item was. So if maybe there's a problem with that batch, they can just be recalled so that now they can be taken back to the manufacturer for replacement. So in this case, all batches are likely to be given numbers so that now they can be easily identifiable and also traceable. And all costs associated to that batch, material cost, labor cost, and other expenses are going to be accumulated together to get the total batch cost. And then if you want to get the cost per unit, then you say the total batch cost divided by the total number of units that are in that particular batch. And I want us to look at an example where we have been given a batch and we now need to compute how much is the total value for the total cost that the business has incurred for that particular batch. So we have here batch number 7777. So we have batch number 7777 used 2000 kgs of material in stores, which cost a total of $10 per kg, and also 500 kgs of special material that was bought in at $4 per kg. 90 hours of labor were spent in Department A, where the employees were paid at the rate of $12 per hour, and 40 hours were spent in Department B, where employees are paid at the rate of $10 per hour. Overheads are absorbed at the rate of $3 per labor hour, and in total 900 units were produced. So the question is asking us to calculate the total absorption cost of the batch and each unit produced. So I want us to now accumulate these costs, know how much is the total material cost, how much is the total labor cost, and then the overheads. And then from there on, we can be able to now compute the total absorption cost for the batch, and then now also compute the total batch cost, or not the total batch cost, but the total cost per unit produced. So we shall start off with the first one. So I want us to now do what? I want us to look at now the question and now find a solution to it. So in this case, we have here our question. So we'll start off with the material costs. We're told that we have materials, so we'll have the direct materials. So how much is the company incurring in terms of direct materials? So we have here that it required, or it used 2000 kgs of material which was in stores. And in this case, the material had costed the company $10 per kg. So we come here and say the direct materials will be the 2,000 units, each at a cost of $10 per kg. So 2,000 multiplied by 10, that should give us a total of 20,000. So now we have there 20,000 for the direct material. We go to the next element. So you told that we also had 500 kgs of special material that was bought in at a price of $4 per kg. So we add now the special material. So in this case, how the special component? So in this case, we had 500 kgs of them. And for this 500 kgs each, we were told was bought in at what price? Let me reconfirm. That is $4 per kg. So now again, we have here 500 kgs multiplied by $4 per kg. That should give us $2,000. Then now we have finished with the direct materials and the special component. We go to the labor. So we are given that 90 hours of labor was spent in Department A. And in this case, labor is paid at the rate of how much is it? 12. So we come here and say direct labor. And direct labor in this case for Department A. So we're told that 90 hours was spent and they're paying $12 per hour. So we come here and say 90 multiplied by 12. So in this case, 90 multiplied by 12, that should give us, I believe, 108. Is it 1080? Yeah, 1080. So we come here and show that the labor cost was equal to 1080. Then we go to direct labor for production center B. Under production center B, we have 40 hours was spent in Department B, where an extra $10 per hour, or the employees are paid at the rate of $10 per hour. So now we come here and say 40 multiplied by 10, that should give us a total of $400. That the total cost here for Department B in terms of labor cost, that one should give us a total of 400. Then now we have the overheads. It will that overheads are absorbed at the rate of $3 per labor hour. So now in this case, we come and show the overheads. So in this case, we are observing the overheads at the rate of $3 per labor hour. So we need to know how many labor hours there are in total. So we had labor hours in the two departments. So we had in in Department A. We also had in Department B. So we have 90 plus 40 hours. That should give us a total of 130 labor hours. And each labor hour is absorbing a total of $3. So therefore, we come here and multiply the rate of $3 per labor hour. So we have 130 multiplied by 3. That should give us a total of 390. I believe there is no other cost that we haven't factored in. So we're just going to add them up in order to obtain the total batch cost. So in this case, we come here and say that the total batch cost will be equal to the summation of all these costs. So we add them up. So we can have 20,000 plus 2,000 plus 1080, and then plus what? Plus 400. And then plus 390. That should give us a total of 23,870. So we come here and say 23,870. That will be the total batch cost. So once you have obtained the total batch cost, the question is not, we're not done with the question yet. So the question is also asking us, what is the cost of each unit produced? So we come here and say that the cost per unit is going to be equal to what? The cost per unit will be equal to the total batch cost. How much is the total batch cost divided by the total units in the batch? So in this case, how many units do we have in the batch? We have a total of 900 units. So we are told that in this case, 900 units were produced. So that is what we're going to use for our computation for each the cost per unit. So we say the total cost divided by the 900. So we come here and say our total cost of 23,870 divided by the 900 units will be able to give us the total cost that the company incurred. So 23,870 divided by 900, that should give us the cost per unit. So we can say that the cost per unit will be 26.522. So that is how we obtain the batch cost and also the total the cost per unit. But it is going to be the total value that the company incurs to produce those units, to produce each and every one of the unit, and to produce each and every one of the unit, and also to produce all the units. So you're going to factor in what is the total materials that were incurred, what is the total labor, what is the total overheads. You're able to get the total batch cost. Then thereafter you get the total cost per unit. So it is identical to the job costing method, only that now you're not producing just one unique item, but instead you're producing numerous items together. And then we can be able now to average the total cost to get the cost per unit. So I want you now to use this example. I want you to use this example in order now to compute the total batch cost. So try out this question. Take a few minutes to try out this question. You obtain the total batch cost, and then from there on, you also obtain the cost per unit in the batch. Then we see if we can look at the next method. So take a few minutes to try this one out.
Okay.
Okay.